Welcome to South Asia Today, a show that provides you the glimpses of South Asia. I'm your host Yeshi. Here are the headlines. As US troop withdrawal deadline nears, Washington calls for UN-led approach to Afghan peace. Pakistan treating POK, its colony lambast Kashmiri activist. And India's Mangaluru city hosts glorious annual buffalo race. Let's begin the show. It's been a year since the deadly COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the WHO. From a little over 100,000 cases then, the caseload stands close to 117 million infections today. Not to forget, over 2.7 million people have died. The counter and cure. The COVID vaccine is out and around 330 million doses have been administered so far. But who is at the forefront in this war? India. Yes, dubbed as the pharmacy of the world, India is providing the silver bullet to the world. Over 58 million doses across 65 countries have been transported under its Vaccine Maitri initiative. The world has heaped praises on its efforts and look forward to getting more support and vaccines in the course ahead.
This COVID consignment being unloaded here in Ethiopia has arrived from India. The country is expected to receive 2.2 million India-made vaccines in the next few weeks under the COVAX initiative. Like Ethiopia, 64 other countries have so far received over 58 million India-made doses in past 1.5 months, with the country set to produce and distribute tens of millions more in the coming months. India is rolling out its vaccines for more than 25 countries under the COVAX initiative.
And this event today symbolizes what are called global solidarity and global cooperation. It also symbolizes the bridging of the gap in inequities across the world. We have always said at the start of this pandemic that we needed global cooperation, global solidarity, global coordination to achieve the target. And the target is simple: to defeat COVID from everywhere in the world, because we recognize that a COVID threat anywhere in the world is a COVID threat everywhere in the world.
While India launched its domestic immunization program on 16 January, its global assistance mission kicked off just 4 days later, with countries in its immediate neighborhood receiving the first tranches of vaccine doses. New Delhi has also adhered to its principle of humanity before commerce, with many of them receiving hundreds of thousands of vaccines free of cost. While India has committed to immunizing 200,000 UN peacekeepers, it will also be proactively supporting the United Nations in vaccinating Syria, where the virus has compounded the crisis.
25 nations across the world have already received Made in India vaccines. 49 more countries will be supplied in the coming days, ranging from Europe, North America, Latin America, the Caribbean, to Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. Keeping in mind the UN peacekeepers who operate in such difficult circumstances, we would like to announce today a gift of 200,000 doses for them as well.
From international groupings to individual leaders, all have appreciated New Delhi's endeavors in strengthening the global fight of keeping corona at bay. Canada expressed its gratitude by placing billboards thanking India and Prime Minister Modi. While India continues to assist the world, it has been steadily expanding its vaccination drive at home. At least 20 million people have already received at least one jab, with a total tally going past 25 million. The Government of India has also negotiated with vaccine manufacturer the Serum Institute of India to further reduce the price that was earlier capped at $2.75 per dose.
We have renegotiated the price. The renegotiated price is significantly lower than 200 rupees per dose. 2.56 crore doses have been administered across the country.
India has reiterated its commitment towards entire humanity and not just the Indians, and the actions in the last few weeks have vividly demonstrated its will. While a few rich countries are planning to hoard billions of doses, India has provided the vaccine to the poorest at a reasonable cost. While experts and leaders have called it a real defender of humanity, it is beginning to appear that they have not been exaggerated in their analysis and praises.
Moving on, weeks of stalled Afghan peace talks have only added to the uncertainty and complexity. As 1st May 2021, the day which is supposed to mark the complete withdrawal of US forces from the war-torn country nears, the new Washington dispensation has called for an interim administration in Kabul until a new constitution is agreed upon and elections held. The US has also proposed an UN-led multilateral engagement to achieve stability. President Ghani says he is ready to go ahead with all that it takes to secure peace, provided the course chosen is fair and democratic.
President Ashraf Ghani, in another peace overture aimed at providing level field to the Taliban insurgents, has said that his government is ready to discuss holding fresh elections, given the process followed is democratic. His announcement comes in the wake of the US calling for the setting up of an interim government in Kabul, followed by inclusive elections. Washington has also proposed a unified UN-led multilateral approach to achieve peace.
انتقال قدرت از طریق انتخابات برای ما یک اصل غیر قابل معامله است.
The Afghan peace process has largely remained stalled this season after both Kabul and the Taliban remained adamant on positions. While Ghani administration, which has released 4,400 Taliban prisoners in the line of last year's agreement, denied releasing 600 Taliban prisoners, citing them extremely dangerous. The insurgent group too has not shown any intent at scaling down violence. Now Washington, which is still reviewing last year's deal, finds itself in a quandary of uncertainty. However, a letter returned to the head of Afghan government by US Secretary of State this week did not outline any change in plan. The US has proposed an UN-led meeting, including the shareholders from the region, that are Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, India and the US, to discuss a unified approach. While Turkey has been asked to host senior-level meetings, the US has urged its envoy to remain transparent with both sides. While the US says it has not ruled out May 1st withdrawal, a 90-day violence reduction plan to prevent a spring offensive by the Taliban has also been prepared. The United States seeks acceleration, and its man on the ground, Zalmay Khalilzad, is reaching out to all parties. The US says it has been pursuing an approach that leads to an inclusive transition of power and the return of peace. Elected 2 years ago, President Ghani, who is not yet midway through his 5-year term, says he is ready to commit all forms of exercise until they are democratic in nature.
که در مورد برگزاری انتخابات آزاد، شفاف و سرتاسری تحت مدیریت جامعه جهانی بحث کنیم. در مورد تاریخ برگزاری انتخابات هم میتوانیم صحبت کنیم و به نتیجه برسیم.
While everything is appear meticulous on paper, the real challenge seems to have unfolded now, with the ball lying in the Taliban's court. Violence and targeted killings have surged, and Western security officials say the insurgents, already holding large swathes of rural areas, have begun to gain ground around towns and cities. The Taliban have not yet committed to peace. The US might withdraw in under 2 months. Pakistan, which has been accused of covertly supporting violence in Afghanistan, has not amended its stance. China, which is said to have made deep economic footprints in Afghanistan, might trounce on the opportunity. Russia and other powers have not revealed their cards yet. Under such circumstances, one can only wait for things to unwind and hope for a peaceful conclusion of the process that is walking the final segment of a tightrope.
Now we take a look at some happenings in Asia in a segment called Asia Watch.
Lego Group CEO Niels B. Christensen says the global toy giant will continue to tap into the Chinese market by providing more Chinese-themed products and further developing its presence on the country's e-commerce sites after Lego achieved double-digit growth in China last year despite the global COVID-19 pandemic. Lego Group launched its first Chinese-themed product in Shanghai in May 2020. Inspired by the story of the Monkey King from the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West, the Lego Monkey Kid quickly became a runaway hit with children who grew up idolizing the legendary figure. Lego Group opened its 200th store on the Chinese mainland in Nanchang, capital of East China's Qinghai province, on the first day of China's National Day holiday in October 2020. The store was the first Lego-certified store in the province as the company further taps into China's lower-tier city. In Japan, convenience is king and getting tested for COVID-19 can be highly inconvenient. Part of solution, as it is for a range of daily necessities in Tokyo, has become the humble vending machine. Eager to conserve manpower and hospital resources, the government conducts just 40,000 polymerase chain reaction tests a day, a quarter of its capacity, restricting them to people who are quite symptomatic or have had a high chance of being infected. That's led to the public to rely heavily on private clinics or buying PCR tests by other means. Vending machines selling test kits offer consumers the option of avoiding crowded clinics or having to wait for an appointment, said Hideki Takemura, director of the Lake Town Takinoko Ear, Nose and Throat Clinic, which has set up 7 machines in the greater Tokyo area. Takemura said there was a huge response from the public when the machines were first deployed and some needed to be emptied of money twice a day. Demand has since ebbed somewhat as a third wave of cases subsided amid a state of emergency. New cases in Tokyo have averaged around 250 over the past 7 days, compared with several days of more than 2,000 in early January. Each vending machine holds about 60 testing kits which sell for 4,500 yen. Customers then mail off a saliva sample for processing. China has launched a digital COVID-19 vaccination certificate for its citizens planning cross-border travel, joining other countries issuing similar documents as they seek ways to reopen their economies. As vaccines are globally being rolled out, a few countries, including Bahrain, have already introduced certificates identifying vaccinated people, and the European Union agreed to develop vaccine passports under pressure from tourism-dependent southern countries. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said on Wednesday that many countries had already expressed a willingness to mutually recognize the international travel health certification. It was not immediately clear with which countries China was talking to about getting its COVID-19 certificate recognized. Some Beijing residents remain skeptical about the certification. The certificate issued by China would have details about the holder's COVID-19 vaccination information and coronavirus test results, the Department of Consular Affairs under China's Foreign Ministry said on its website. China has not yet announced any relaxation of quarantine restrictions for people arriving in the country who have been vaccinated. The country's health authorities were studying issues including whether vaccinated travelers to China could be exempted from 14 days of quarantine, the state-owned Global Times reported on Tuesday, citing a person familiar with the matter.
Ever since Pakistan illegally occupied a part of then princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, it has been committing numerous atrocities on the people of this region. Their lands have been snatched, their natural resources plundered, and adding more to their worries, even their political leaders work in cahoots with Islamabad. With no light at the end of the tunnel, the life of people living in these illegally occupied territories is slowly getting pushed towards complete darkness.
Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, which remains under the illegal occupation of Pakistan for more than 72 years, are being treated as colonies. The grip of an occupier is getting stronger, with rights activists meeting a brutal state crackdown or ending up in prison. Indiscriminate plunder of natural resources by Islamabad has been highlighted repeatedly, but that hasn't been enough to deter it. Activists say that the region is not even granted a small share of dividends generated from its resources.
Water resources are used, but we are completely ignored in any kind of royalty in this Neelam and Jhelum hydro projects. So Azad Kashmir is a colony simply, and all those officials who are installed in Azad Kashmir, they are playing in the hands of GOC Murray, and they are serving Pakistan's sovereign interest. They are not serving the people of Azad Jammu and Kashmir's interest.
Pakistan falsely claims to have granted autonomy to the region. Locals call it an absolute joke. Even the Prime Minister and the President of the occupied POK have no say in the policy making for Kashmir. In fact, they are there to execute orders of Islamabad-installed Lent officers. The so-called Independent Legislative Assembly is not allowed to prepare even one document on its own. It must have the approval and blessings of Islamabad.
All the powers, constitutionally, all the powers is in the hand of four powerful Lent officers. The Prime Minister and President have no constitutionally any rights to serve the people. And that constitution, that act is imposed by the government of Pakistan, and the so-called Legislative Assembly has no right to amend or to delete or to add anything which is benefits for the Kashmiri people.
In Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, anyone who wants to serve as a public servant is asked to sign a pledge of loyalty to Pakistan. Even the establishment has used draconian legislation to frame or suppress the voice of anybody who has dissented or has gone against the late protocols. And with no legal recourse available to these hapless people, an assertive international intervention is the only way they can be saved from an imminent doom.
Moving on, each festival in India pertains to different occasions. While some welcome the seasons of the year, others promote sports in the country. However, all the festivals come with a promise of joy and a reminder of the country's cultural heritage. Recently, a grand traditional buffalo race festival drew scores of people to India's southern Mangaluru city. Over 150 pairs of buffaloes took part in the annual event, which is usually marked by the end of the harvest season in the region. Have a look. The southern state of Karnataka is famous for several sporting festivals which include animal racing. One such festival is Kambala Buffalo Race, which was recently organized in India's Mangaluru city with enthusiasm and fervor. The festival involves the traditional buffalo race, a popular and unique sport among the farming community of the Indian state. It is believed that the festival is dedicated to Lord Kadri Manjunatha, an incarnation of Lord Shiva, and it is celebrated to please the god for a good harvest. Over 150 pairs of buffaloes participated in the race. The race usually marks the end of the harvest season in the region. It is popular among rural masses and generally takes place in wet rice fields. For young participants, the race becomes a show of strength and valor.
There is a matter of prestige more than anything else. It is matter of prestige, it is matter of tradition, it is matter of culture for us. That is why this Kambala is getting this sort of a support. Unfortunately, what is happening is people sit outside and comment on this Kambala. I urge all people to come and watch this Kambala, see how it feels. It is part of our life. That is why we are so deeply involved in this activity.
For the race, the chosen buffaloes undergo rigorous training and are fed on a special diet. On the day of the festival, the buffaloes are made to wear decorative and colorful headgears made of brass and silver, sometimes bearing the emblems of the sun and moon, and ropes are tied as a bridle. The special cloth used to cover the buffalo's back is called pavadi. People bet on buffaloes. One can witness more than 20,000 spectators in well-organized Kambala egging on and cheering the buffaloes to complete the race. The winning pair is rewarded a cash prize and coconuts, but traditionally it was a non-competitive sport in which buffaloes run in the field one by one.
In Mangalore city, for the last 4 years, we, a team of youngsters, have been organizing this. Our primary intention has been that a lot of people from different parts of the state, different parts of the country, today come to Mangalore. We should exhibit our tradition, culture and sport to them. That is the reason we have organized this Kambala for the last 4 years, and it has been successful in all ways.
The word Kambala is derived from Kampa Kala, the word Kampa, which signifies slushy, muddy field. Every year, farmers from across the country participate in the race festival. Last year, Srinivasa Gowda, a farmer, had a record-breaking win that made him an overnight sensation. He covered buffalo race in 142.5 meters in just 13.62 seconds. According to the beliefs, Kambala is a festival that originated in the farming community of Karnataka, and it attracts huge crowds of sports and adventure enthusiasts, both from India and abroad alike. It's time for me to wrap up today's episode. We will be back next week at the same time. This is Yeshi signing off on behalf of the entire production team of South Asia Today. Goodbye and take care.